With the brain of Morbius, we come to a show that was a very significant episode for Doctor Who and its lore, and unfortunately has become even more so for really god-awful reasons. But anyway, we learn more details about the lore of Time Lords and Doctor Who and everything and all that. So right off the bat, we have Sarah and the Doctor. This time, the Doctor, and I think you can conclude that he's right, that the Time Lords manipulated him into coming to this planet, the planet of Karn. And this is the home of the Sisterhood of Karn, who I know there's other elements of their story and I guess novels and maybe probably Big Finish as well, about them having been an offshoot of the Time Lords to somewhat, rather than just two different entities who know each other and whatnot, which seems to be the case in this episode. I can't remember what the Pythian society that dominated Gallifrey, and then what became the Time Lords rebelled against that, and then they formed the Sisterhood and sort of whatever, which would have made for a more interesting story, I would have thought. And I can't remember. I guess that's part of the Cartmill idea that they were going to establish, but never got around to it. And again, how much of it is it canon? I guess it's not canon anymore, is it? Yeah. So I guess I don't know if that was ever really established. Oh yeah, that's what it was and all that. But anyway, here we see them for the first time. And at the time, I thought, I mean, not at the time, later on when I understood what regeneration was and all that, because for the first time I was watching these shows, I didn't know there were other Doctors. So a lot of this episode didn't, I can't remember, it didn't make any sense to me. And then later on when I saw it again, I was like, oh, okay. But anyway, that the elixir of life is what they're all about, and they guard it, and it grants them, immortality. They live a long time, but it seems that they can age if they don't keep drinking it or what have you, and they're about to run out of it. There's a problem there. Fortunately, the Doctor solves that, but at the time, they suspect that he's a Time Lord agent, and more or less he is, but not for the point that they seem to think it is. They seem to think that the Time Lords are coming to steal it from them, and now that it's at its weakest point and all that, so they're out to kill the Doctor. Meanwhile, the real reason he's there, this episode obviously is a tribute, more or less, to Frankenstein and that whole trope and whatnot. It's a dark planet. There's lightning and everything. And there's a mad scientist, because Frankenstein gives you the mad scientist trope, and here we have the mad scientist in the form of Solon and his deformed henchman, Kondo, not to be confused with condominium, and all that is there, and it's just blatantly obvious, and it's not like anyone would deny it. What are you talking about? We never even thought of Frankenstein. And of course, he's building a monster. And with Frankenstein, of course, the idea was to put a brain into this patchwork, put together body, and bring it to life and all that. Well, the brain in this case is the brain of a thought to be dead Time Lord criminal who had a band of followers, apparently a cult around him, and he devastated the planet of Karn, and but was eventually defeated there and then executed on that planet. And as far as everyone was concerned, he was dead. But it seems Solon was there as well when it happened, and he was a follower of Morbius, and somehow arranged to have his brain removed before his body was destroyed. It's just one last little checkup from his doctor before he gets executed. I don't know how he managed to pull that off, but he did. And Morbius's brain is stuck in a jar, hooked up to, I don't know, a dialect voice kind of thing. And so there you go. That's the whole, the secret there. That, Morbius is still alive, and he's on the verge of coming back in this body that Solon is building for him. And the another thing about Karn, you only get to see it very briefly, but it's there's like this graveyard of spaceships. Because spaceships keep crashing on the planet. Well, it seems the Sisterhood is causing this because people keep seeking out the planet of Karn because they want the elixir. They want immortality. So they've heard about it. I believe, thanks to Morbius revealing that to the outer, galaxy and what have you. And so they just keep crashing them. If you just happen to be passing by, well, sucks to be you. You get too close to Karn and you're going to crash. So some poor bastard, the opening scene is this bug-like guy, and he's crawling around. And I think it was referred to, he was a creature from another episode, but I can't remember which. But I don't think he was even part of Baker's series. But anyway, Kondo catches him and chops his head off. But it's a bug head, so it's no good. It's a song. That's no good. But then the Doctor and Sarah show up very much like old horror movies, and Rocky Horror Picture Show, stuff like that. Oh, it's a rainy, stormy night, and they show up at the house of Solin, which is just this dilapidated place. I mean, there's literally like the foyer or whatever is. The columns are just sort of bent and everything. It's a pretty cool set, And this whole thing is shot on set, and it was there again. I think a lot of these work very well, and just spooky lighting and everything, and it just works out. And of course, has that alien atmosphere because this is an alien world. So they come in. Oh, he sees the Doctor, and he says, "There we go. That's the head I want for Morbius." Now, the obvious thing that sticks out is just forget about the stupid monster body you're making. Just, cut open the Doctor's head, scoop his brain out, and put Morbius in that. And there you go. Plus, you will have all the regenerations left for the Doctor, So, it never occured to it. It says, look, I worked really hard on that body, and goddammit, we're going to use it. So of course that's the whole plot for Solin and all that. Meanwhile, the Sisterhood are acting against the Doctor. They steal his TARDIS. They have these powers. Once they conjure them up, they're able to teleport the TARDIS into their little secret keep or what have you, and that goes back and forth. The Doctor gets captured. Oddly enough, they teleport him after Solin knocks him out, getting ready to chop his head off. He gets teleported to the Sisterhood, and they actually save him for a bit, then to have him executed. Oddly enough, since they kind of look like a coven of witches, all in red, they execute him by burning him at the stake. Yes. That's how they do it. But in the discussions there with the Doctor, we learn about a bit more of the relationship between the Time Lords and the Sisterhood. And I, at the time, when I began to understand regeneration, thought that perhaps the elixir of life was the source of it, that this was a discovery they had. They talk about sharing it, but they never really specify what the Time Lords would have interest in it beyond that. And I thought that they managed to figure out a way to synthesize regeneration by those means. Of course, now we know it actually came out of child abuse. God, what a terrible story. Anyway, but that's not really stated in this. But, I thought it, would make a better reason. The other aspect was that through time travel and exposure to the time vortex, it makes the regeneration. I can't remember exactly, but anyway, you get a lot of these little details and whatnot. Another aspect of it is the Doctor, before he passed out, he began to sense the presence of Morbius. Now, this is another indication of the sort of the telepathic abilities amongst Time Lords, and certainly Time Lords who can make contact with one another by those means and whatnot. And so that was another little hint of that there. That he saw Solin had a bust he had made of Morbius about apparently what he looked like before before his body died, at least. And the Doctor's looking at that, and boy, it looks familiar. And now he realizes who it is, and he detected the sense and all that. The Sisterhood don't believe him and all this stuff. Sarah actually once again comes in and rescues the Doctor. and they make their escape, but before they do, she gets blinded. So this is another thing about blind people in Frankenstein. So, and then, of course, Kondo is already smitten and in love with her. Girl, pretty, and all this stuff. But he's getting a little tired of Solin waiting around because he lost his arm when his spaceship crashed on there. And then we find out, Solin says, the arm was so badly damaged he had to amputate it, and he gave him a hook. Well, that's not the real story. The real story was, hey, that makes a good arm. But I might want to let him keep the other one because I'll need a handyman around the house, and what handyman with no hands is no good. So he let him keep one, but he took the other one and attached it to the monster body. Yes, and at one point, Kondo sees it's his arm. Jeez. And he's had it, so of course eventually Solin just has to shoot him. Now he shoots him and you can see the blood and everything, and this was one of these things. Oh my god, that's horrific and horrible. Not really, but at the time it was seen as such. Doctor Who is such a violent show. Yeah, but anyway, so this, so it's back and forth escape and all this stuff, but it works well. And the intriguing elements of, there's this other Time Lord, another Time Lord criminal, and you get more details or hints at details about Time Lord lore and all that. And then ultimately, Morbius can't stand it anymore. He's going nuts, stuck in that jar, and he demands that Solin try this other idea that he had, where he takes this fishbowl thing with two, light sticking out. It's really ridiculous. But Solin says, there's all kind of problems. I don't know. And he says, I can't stand it anymore. So he does it, but then the brain falls on the floor and stuff because of Kondo. It's horrible but funny at the same time. There's the great Morbius on the floor. But eventually he gets him in there, and he's a raging beast at first, but then Solin's able to fix that and calm him down. And so there he is. He's in this really disgusting body. But the Doctor is able to convince him to challenge him to a sort of wrestling match through their telepathic ability, some sort of mind-bending game that they would play, but it could be lethal. And that's what the intent was, certainly for Morbius. And so Morbius agrees to do this, and Morbius pronounces that he was a far more powerful Time Lord than the Doctor was. This is one of these things that I think puts stakes into Doctor Who and makes it, where you don't know the outcome. Well, you know the outcome, he's going to win, but still, it gives it the stakes and the risks and the danger for the Doctor, and that he's just a Time Lord. He's not Dr. God, he's Doctor Who. And so some of the elements of the new Who stuff where he's feared and that sort of thing, I can understand that. But to the point of godhood, I never really liked that. And that's pretty much where the character is. It's just God. And so here you have Morbius, who had was more of a threat and danger and stuff. But he's been in that jar all this time. So the Doctor says, I doubt it. I don't think you're up to it. And he says, I can do it. So lures him into it. It was still very dangerous, and the Doctor could have died. So there you go. Of course, he wins. The Sisterhood chase this idiot monster after he blows a fuse, and his little helmet is all full of steam and stuff. And so the Sisterhood chases him off the cliff. Now the Doctor is able to restore the eternal flame for the elixir and all that, but still the old head of the coven sacrifices herself into the flame, and okay. Sarah's eyes naturally restore. She was not permanently blinded, and they leave. Yeah. So the Sisterhoods, they can go back to, doing their little chants and stuff. And we'll see them way later again in Night of the Doctor, yeah, which was a cool little mini episode, and all that did was make me want to see an entire series of Paul McGann's Doctor. But yeah, we just can't have nice things. So an interesting aspect of the story that I thought should have been pursued more, and all kinds of elements one could utilize. Perhaps Big Finish has done that, I don't know. And of course the novels and whatnot, but on television would have been great to have. They show up here and there, and then oh god, and Hellbent, and it's just oh jeez. But that's about it. Not much else is done with them. Would have been kind of interesting to say that, oh, after the Time War and Rassilon deposing Romana, I guess, when she was president, she goes into exile and ends up joining the Sisterhood. That could have been a thing. But, yeah, but whatever. They don't know what they're doing. At this point, I don't want to see the current crew running the show touch any of these other characters. But it probably would happen at some point, but it would be awful. So, of course, why is this beyond these other little elements of Morbius and the Sisterhood and the history of the Time Lords and that sort of, little teases here and there so important? Oh, well, during the mind battle between the Doctor and Morbius, there's a little screen showing what's on their mind, I guess. And apparently, given from the visuals, as you're losing the battle, your past lives begin to appear on the screen. And so you see Pertwee, you see Troughton, and then Hartnell. And at this point, it's looking pretty bad for the Doctor. He's really grimacing, he's in pain, and the Morbius is gloating and everything. And then all of a sudden, well, you see Morbius as the face based on his bust, and then there's these other guys. 8 of them to be, in fact. And so, for whatever reason, a bunch of people, and this was a fan theory for the longest time, and then there was, of course, Hinchcliffe, who said, oh yeah, I did think of this, that these were actually pre-Hartnell incarnations of the Doctor. Now, it's so what that he says this in some interview, and probably just for the purposes of teasing the interview, having something more than just, details of the shows he worked on and all that. Oh, isn't that interesting? But it's not, because it's not pursued after that. Sarah watches it. She's not blind anymore at this point, so she would have recognized Pertwee and kind of realized, oh, wow. And oh, Doctor, was that, he says, oh, no, sir. Oh, no, only 3 of them were me, sir. But that's all it would have been. The others are obviously the other incarnations of Morbius, because as you see them, Morbius loses. He's starting to lose. He's not really, like the Doctor predicted, he was not really in shape for this battle. At his prime, he would have destroyed the Doctor, but he wasn't up to it. He's now a brain in a bucket on top of some, I don't know what. So he loses, and that's the otherwise it's like Morbius never regenerated. He had one in body and that was it. Come on. So it just the story works better that way. And if you were going to say that there was these 8 other incarnations before the Doctor, although I think I've read an article somewhere where someone noticed that 2 of them kind of looked like the same guy. So I don't know if that was, is it? I don't know. But then you say, oh, it's only 7. But and none of them were women or kids. But it's he only got to those 8 before he blew a fuse. But it would have been pursued further and all this sort of thing, and acknowledged as part of it, and there's all these other Doctors and everything, and it just wasn't. And there are people trying to back it up now and say it was part of it. Well, like Moffat trying to, maintain his good faith with the BBC, I guess, that has to say, oh yeah, what a brilliant idea. Oh, I always thought that was cool. And no, you didn't. He does his show with Clara going through the timeline, and it's none of those guys are there. Oh, jeez. Oh, it's just stupid. So, it they're Morbius, you know, and then that's just the way it is. What was he doing dressing up like the Three Musketeers and whatnot? I don't know. He was just some rogue Time Lord running around. Who knows where he went to recruit soldiers for his cult. But there you go. That's it. It's over. He fell over a cliff and smashed down on the blow. Unless that was a really sturdy little globe, maybe he's still alive, you know. And how powerful was that alien body? Yeah, oh boy. Because Frankenstein always came back, so. And I don't know, maybe Big Finish has already done the Return of Morbius or something. But so I suppose that's possible. But yeah, the Morbius doctors, no. It's the Morbius. It just doesn't work. I don't know why it's so, you know. I mean, there's things you can look at. It's like I said, like the Sisterhood of Karn. You could base more stories off of those. There's little elements here and there. Oh, hey, you know, if you do it like this, it links to that. That, you know, sometimes you can hit on something that's kind of cool and stuff. But here, it really needed to be developed at the time, but to do it now. And the things that just don't quite work. There's lots of things that don't quite work. You know, they talk about when the Brigadier comes back for the Fifth Doctor and the timeline doesn't quite fit and all that. It's a mistake. That's what it is. You know. You know, you can go back to Troughton's regeneration. Suddenly his pants change. Stuff like that. But it at this point, all these years and all that, it's best to just stick with Hartnell was the first Doctor. And especially for someone like Moffat doing that when he did that Twice Upon a Time show, the whole plot only works when this is the first time it happened. You know, the first Doctor, he's never regenerated before, and he's nervous and scared about it. So why would he be? I mean, yeah, the Doctor's always kind of resistant to do it when it happens, but the point of that story was that this was the first time, and it says it implicitly. So he had amnesia. Yeah, lazy. So yeah, that's a terrible, horrible thing that was done to a franchise in Timeless Children. It can be easily retconned, but I am dubious that would happen due to the regime of the moment. So yeah, so there, unfortunately, that thing has smeared its stench over this episode, which is a pretty good little episode, a nice tribute to horror films like Frankenstein and whatnot. And they stole Hitler's brain or whatever that one was, which is kind of the same plot. And stuff like that, you know, it's fun. But unfortunately, current endeavors, not so much. There we go. It was the Morbius, not the Morbius doctors. No, it wasn't. He only had one doctor, Solid. Thank you for watching and listening. Say, why not like and subscribe and check out that link description below. That'll take you to my mini stores that have plenty of goodies for you. Yes, that's right, you. Most notably, my comic book Night over at IndiePlanet.com. And of course, you can catch the Mr. Nailsin Show podcast on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos over at BitChute.